For reference, I was born in 1991, which makes all these games before my time. I sure as hell wasn't kicking shell in video games when I was 2 or 3, so I missed out on all these games when they were initially released. But due to the sheer quality and notoriety of these games, a few of them persisted on the tongues of many retro game enthusiasts. Turtles in Time was definitely one of those games that people still talked about over and over again. But there are many Konami-made TMNT games that span across 3 consoles, 1 handheld, and arcade machines. Enter the Cowabunga Collection that lovingly aimed to assemble every one of these games in a celebratory collection for modern hardware. And I don't exaggerate when I say that Digital Eclipse has created what I think is the best retro collection of all time. There are so many improvements made here, including performance upgrades, enhancements, online play for 4 of the games, and the Turtle Lair. The Turtle Lair is very special because it has all of the original box art for these games, magazine articles, stills from the TMNT cartoons throughout the ages, and so much more. All of these games have been chronicled perfectly in this collection, so let's do a little retrospective of all these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, and get a Platinum trophy as well. The Platinum is kinda an afterthought here, and you'll see why. This is Platinum Hunters, the show where we take a look at everything it takes to get the Platinum trophy, and whether it's worth the effort to achieve it. If you like beat 'em ups, we have another beat 'em up already on the channel, Streets of Rage 4. Yeah, not the one you were thinking of when I was gonna say beat 'em up. Don't worry, that one's coming very soon, later on in the channel. But play Streets of Rage 4, it's a great time, and from the same company as Shredder's Revenge. And subscribe for more trophy guide videos just like this one, because you might just find your next Platinum trophy. This is probably going to be the simplest and most straightforward roadmap we are ever going to cover in a Platinum Hunters trophy guide. All you have to do to collect this collection's Platinum trophy is beat all 13 games in the collection to their end credits. That's it. There is no fluff here. Just beat all of the games. It's so simple that I almost want to complain about it, but considering which games we are playing, I actually think it fits pretty perfectly. 2 of the games have stipulations on how you have to beat them though, and they are TMNT Tournament Fighters on the SNES and TMNT Tournament Fighters on the Genesis. This collection is so complete that it includes 3 versions of Tournament Fighters, 2 versions of TMNT The Arcade Game, and 2.5 versions of Turtles in Time. You'll see what I mean when we get to that part. Yes, I am very aware of the watch mode save exploit that you can use to easily clear 11 of the 13 games and get their trophies. You can look it up on how to do it if you like, but the reason I won't be covering it is just in case it gets patched. I want this guide to last, so I'm just going to give you strategies to beat it naturally. If you need any more help with getting this Platinum, I have more helpful guides in the description below to assist you. The first 2 games we are going to look at are straight from the arcades. Our first game is the original arcade version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, perfectly ported. Besting this game is going to get you the Heroes in a Half Shell trophy. This one is a good old-fashioned beat 'em up that ate your quarters like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Thankfully now you won't have to worry about that, and you can activate Infinite Continues. This will make sure you don't get a game over and have to start again. However, the whole game took me about 40 minutes to complete, so maybe it's worth challenging yourself to see if you and maybe a partner can beat it. Plus, this is one of the 4 games in the collection that has online play, so co-op is a really great option to play this game. This game is good, but TMNT Turtles in Time is better. This is the arcade version of the iconic Turtles in Time game that many people played on the SNES. We'll get to that later. Hitting the end credits for this game will get you the Callback Trophy. This game is so good, and the arcade version is 4 players, so 4 players can get in on the time-bending action. Similar to the first arcade game, you can just throw on unlimited continues to make sure you make it to the very end. Or you can give yourself an exorbitant amount of lives, like 100 should do maybe. Yeah, when me and my co-op partner played, we just cranked the lives up when we died, and at that point you have no excuse not to make it to the end. It will take you about 45 minutes to an hour to finish a run, and you'll go to some really wacky places in different time periods. You can also play this version of the game online as well, so all around it is a great time. So the next platform to check out is the 16-bit Nintendo Entertainment System. And the game ordering for this system kinda gets a little confusing. The first game released for the NES is simply called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is not a home console port of the arcade game, but instead a 2D side-scrolling platformer. This one is tough, and getting the Shredding the Shredder trophy is not going to be easy. This game feels Castlevania-esque, where its unique mechanic is that each Ninja Turtle is treated as a separate life, so you don't get game over until all your Ninja Turtles have lost all their health. Each Ninja Turtle also has their own signature weapon that will be useful when fighting certain enemies or bosses. For example, Donatello is clearly the best turtle for fighting Rocksteady in the first major boss fight. It says so in the in-game manual, which gives you helpful tips and tricks for the harder parts of the game. I searched the cheats menu and online for known cheat codes, and the only helpful one is by entering the Konami code to give yourself 4 continues instead of 2. So for this game, I had to get good. It's probably the toughest game in the collection to get the trophy for, as it really puts your retro platforming skills to the test if you had any at all. Players who didn't grow up in the NES and SNES eras like myself are going to struggle with this game. Remember that you can watch a full run through of the game in the menus that will show you a perfect no-hit run, and this will give you a lot of cheese strategies that you can implement yourself. Plus, remember that you can rewind up to 10 seconds at a time if you don't like the outcome of what happened. There are plenty of tough stages here, so this is going to be a tough challenge. Remember to use saves as well and rewind to help you best this game. Then we got our sequel game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 The Arcade Game, which is just an NES port of the first arcade game we already covered. I told you the naming and numbering was going to get weird. The trophy that is up for grabs here for beating this game again is called Pizza Party. Even though the game is only 2 players now and looks different because of the NES limitations, you pretty much know what you're in for if you did the arcade version first. However, the runtime of the game is boosted to 1 hour because the game has 2 exclusive levels for you to play on with 2 new boss fights. As well, some levels have been extended, so in my opinion, this is the best version to play despite hardware shortcomings. As well, for cheats, you can just throw on God mode for complete invincibility, and victory is pretty much yours. Then the next game in the sequence is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, which is a full brand new sequel to the TMNT Arcade Game, but never got an arcade version or port. So it is just a NES/Famicom game. My brain hurts. And beating this game gets you the trophy. I have become Turtle Eater of Pizzas. Early on, I heard that this is one of the weaker games in the collection, but I really liked the Manhattan Project. The story was cool, the levels were great, there were a bunch of villains we hadn't seen in the other games yet, and it was much longer of a game at around 1 hour and 20 minutes of content. While the cheats menu doesn't have a God mode like the last game, you can pretty much simulate it with infinite lives. Plus, it's got an easy mode if you want to casually play it without cheating too hard. It was a cool game, but I know what's coming later on, and it's even better. The weirdest game in this whole collection is the NES version of TMNT Tournament Fighters. This is a completely new version of the SNES Tournament Fighters with a smaller roster and fit to run on NES hardware. The SNES version was released in September 1993, and this version released 6 months after that in February 1994. It also never came to Japan, which is weird. For context, the SNES had been on the market for 2 to 3 years already, so I failed to see the necessity of a game on previous hardware. But here we are today with the opportunity to play this oddity of a game. And you will have to win the tournament to get the N Tournament Champion trophy. Now, as you know, I really suck at fighting games, so this is one I struggled with. You have to pick a turtle and first beat the other 3 turtles. Then you will fight my boy Casey Jones, then Hothead, and finally you go up against the Foot Clan head honcho himself, Shredder. So that's a total of 6 opponents you will need to defeat to beat this game's story mode. As far as augmenting the game goes, the only thing you can do is go into the options menu and throw it on easy mode with extra continues, and messing with the game speed if you like. But even on easy mode, it won't really make this all a cakewalk. You still need to learn the combos and get used to the fighting mechanics. It feels way stiffer than the other 2 games, and that's because they're adapting this for older hardware. Really, the best thing you can do to help yourself is use the rewind feature so you can change the outcomes of exchanges. If you take a bad combo or a ton of damage, just rewind and try it again. So get ready for a challenge here, and this might be one of those games walling you off of the Platinum Trophy, depending on your fighting game prowess. Next should come the NES games, and that one game that many of you guys hold so fondly, but slow down, you forgot a platform. The ever-resilient Game Boy had 3 TMNT platforming games hit the platform at different times in the handheld's life cycle. The first game was released in 1990 titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan, and it's quite the looker. Well, if anything, I think it's got character for an old Game Boy game, but man is it stiff, clunky, and simple. Completing the game will give you the waiting for the other foot to drop trophy. This game also comes under the publisher Ultra Games in the NTSC version, like the TMNT one on the NES. It is a very simple game to beat, as your strategy is to take a few baby steps at a time and wait for an enemy to jump at you. There will be some stage hazards to avoid, but the bulk of the game is about booping enemies at the right time, in which they die in one hit. The whole game took me about 40 minutes to complete, and it's a pretty simple experience. There are bosses that can be a threat, but much easier than most of the other bosses in the other platforming games we will take a look at. Plus you have save states to help you if you're really messing up. Just make sure you use them. As well, the in-game manual will tell you about the mini-game rooms, and these are good for giving you back some health to your turtles when they are low. Out of all the platformers in the Cowabunga Collection, this one is the easiest, and you won't have to swear at this one too much. The following year, the sequel Game Boy game TMNT 2 Back from the Sewers came out, published by regular Konami. You'll have to beat Shredder once again to get the Back into Action trophy. The graphics look much better here, and the gameplay is way deeper this time. You can move up and down platforms and even in and out of the screen when the 3D parts of the levels appear. It's so much more satisfying a game to play, and it's crazy how many improvements they made on this hardware in a year's time. The other thing that changed is that Back from the Sewers is also much harder to beat. Enemies, and especially bosses, are way more difficult to contend with this time. Thankfully, in the enhancements menu, you can just turn on infinite lives, which will restore your turtles' health when they all die. It will send you back to the beginning of the sections though, so you can use the save feature to bring you back to the spot you want. This is a significant step up in difficulty, but thankfully cheats and modern quality of life features save the day if you're struggling. The last game they released on the Game Boy was TMNT 3 Radical Rescue, and they went and turned the game into a full-blown Metroidvania, another genre of games I am absolutely doo-doo at. So we got another trophy for grabs here called Gnarly Greatness. This is yet another big improvement graphically and gameplay wise, and it's crazy to see how much they pushed the Game Boy hardware from the first game in 1990 to 1993. This game is one big maze in Metroid fashion where you will need to rescue your fellow turtles and beat a whole bunch of the Turtles Rogues Gallery. You start off as Michelangelo, and finding a new turtle gives you new powers to get you to a place where you couldn't previously access before. Now, I gave this game a fair shot, but I'm not going to lie to you, I kept getting lost and dying. So I looked online, and lo and behold, I found a way to skip all of the Metroidvania parts of this game. You see, this game doesn't have a save system and uses good old-fashioned passwords to bring you to different parts of the game. So what I found is that I could enter the password 1HHHH2, and that would teleport me right to the game's final boss rush with all turtles, full health upgrades, and all the weapons. This won't make beating the game a surefire thing, but now all of the platforming parts are done. What's left is a very tough challenge, but you have the save function to help you, which I really recommend you use it after you beat every single boss. I abused the heck out of it, even mid-boss fight, because I was getting my green cheeks slapped around. For many of these fights, I also consulted the in-game watch feature to see what was the best way to defeat these bosses. The boss rush order will go Scratch, Dirtbag, Triceraton, Scaletail, and then Shredder is the last, except when you kill him once, he comes back as Cyber Shredder with full health. Fucking hell. I absolutely had to abuse the save states here because you have to be pixel perfect to simultaneously chip away at his health and preserve your own. You have all 4 turtles to help you, but I found Donatello to be the best because he could climb up walls to dodge powerful attacks. Perseverance is the name of the game here, and when you defeat Cyber Shredder using these tips, the trophy will come to you. Now, if you're one of the people who beat this game the way it was intended to be played, you really have my sheer respect and admiration. Now it's time to take a look at the best game in the whole collection, and it's found on the Super NES/Super Famicom. Now we will go after the trophy, Totally Tubular Time Travel, for beating a run of TMNT 4 Turtles in Time. This is the SNES version of the beloved game, which is longer than the arcade version because it has 4 more bosses added to it, extended sections in existing levels, and a new stage with a Shredder boss fight where you have to throw enemies at the screen to hit him. Even though you could only experience this with 2 players at a time, I still find this to be the most enjoyable version of the game with all its new stuff added to beat it. Beating it is not as simple as the arcade version, as there's no hyperinflating your life count, but you can give yourself 10 continues and put the game on easy mode in the options menu. This will be more than enough to help you beat it even if you're playing it half asleep. So just enjoy the time traveling ride and the trophy will come pretty naturally. So far the beat 'em up games haven't been the thing standing in your way of the Platinum Trophy. The next game though, it might stand in your way. The only other SNES release game that we have to beat is the best version of TMNT Tournament Fighters for the S Tournament Champion Trophy. Like the NES version, you will have to beat this game's story battle mode all the way to the last boss to get the trophy. The kicker is that you will need to play it on the default difficulty setting of level 3 or higher in the options menu to get Karai to appear as the last boss, or else Shredder will be your last foe. The trophy says you need to beat Karai for it to pop. This made the battles pretty annoying and difficult to beat as they block your attacks a lot more frequently and will be more aggressive with special moves. As well, there is no real way to cheese the game other than giving yourself more continues. You're just gonna have to keep fighting all the opponents till you fight against Karai. That's not necessarily a bad thing because the game feels really great to play. It's like playing Street Fighter 2 but with our turtle friends and foes. What you want to do is go into the options menu and change the round timer to 30 seconds. You don't necessarily need to KO the opponent to win after all. Just have more health than the opponent by the end of the round. I also use Donatello and Leonardo for this because they have some great defensive options and a couple of good moves to cheese some health out of some opponents. Lastly, use the rewind feature like we've been doing before to aid you. This will make sure you don't sustain some heinous damage and you can't recover the round. Just keep using this strategy all the way up the tournament ladder, and after you beat Shredder and Karai, you will be awarded the trophy. This game is one of the best in the collection, so I'm happy to play it even though I'm caca at fighting games. Here we go. We have one more platform with 2 more games left on it in this Cowabunga Collection trophy guide. It's been extremely fun covering all these retro games so far, so let me know you're enjoying this walk down memory lane by hitting that like button. Or maybe you're discovering these for the first time and I hope I'm inspiring you to grab this collection at some point. Let's keep going and show you the TMNT games released on the Sega Genesis. Describing this first Genesis game is a bit difficult. TMNT The Hyperstone Heist is Turtles in Time, but it's not a port. It tells its own story, but it's not a reboot. The only word I can think of is that it's a reimagining or a remix? Whatever it is, it's really good. Hyperstone Heist is a great game in its own right, and if you complete it to the credits, you'll get the Sewers 4 trophy. If you've played either of the Turtles in Time games in this collection, this one is going to be very familiar. There are a couple of new levels and bosses to face off against, and the story is completely rewritten, but much of it won't be a surprise. Just set the game to easy mode, crank up the player rest and lives counter, and have fun. This is also another one of the games with online play, so maybe do it co-op with some friends. And lastly, we got the G Tournament Champion trophy for beating the real Karai last boss in the Genesis version of TMNT Tournament Fighters. I'm sorry Genesis fans, but this version of the game is just not it. It really doesn't feel good to play. Hyperstone Heist is awesome, but Genesis players got the inferior version here. It doesn't even have Shredder in it, what the heck. Now, the key statement here is that you have to defeat the real Karai to pop the trophy. And in order to do that, you have to beat the game on the highest difficulty. If you play through the game on any other difficulty, you will fight a clone of Karai instead, and you won't get the trophy. So that really sucks if you're not good at fighting games, but fear not. Of course, there is a way to cheese it, but you need a second controller. By the way, credit goes to YouTube user Shake Your Geek, and the video is linked down below. So before you start kicking shell, go into the enhancements menu and turn on playable bosses. This will put the 3 bosses, Triceraton, Krang, and Karai in the character select menu. Then go into the options menu and crank the difficulty to the highest mode, turn the round limit to 1, and crank the continues to the max. Then go into 1-player mode and pick your fighter, maxing out the speed and power stats. Listen up carefully for this next part. Now, with the second controller plugged in, press start on the second controller when you're on the stage select screen where it shows all the planets. That will allow you to choose a fighter with the second controller, and that will allow you to fight an opponent that doesn't move. This is awesome because the opponents are super cheesy when you're fighting them on the hardest difficulty. After you defeat the fighter controlled by the second controller, repeat the process by choosing a different fighter now. You're going to want to repeat this process until you defeat all 8 fighters on the main roster. Now we move on to the bosses, which are those silhouettes on the top of the screen. Repeat the process for the 9th time, except now you wait until you're actually in the fight with Triceraton, to press the start button. Then select Triceraton with the second controller and beat the crap out of him. Do the same thing with our next boss, Krang, pressing the start button in the actual fight, choosing the boss, and then bashing his brain in. Now the stage is set to fight the real Karai and not a clone of her. Beating her naturally is very difficult on this difficulty, and she legit embarrassed me in 3 hits. You will need to use the rewind button like crazy to beat her. So rewind any critical hits that put you in danger of dying. Or you can purposefully die and then go into the character select screen and fight fire with fire. Choose Karai with full stats, which is stupidly OP, and use her to win the fight. She is seriously good, so it makes this fight way less of a rewind slog. Once you beat the real Karai, Cowabunga! Victory is ours. And with that last game in the collection beaten to the credits, that's the end of our Mean and Green trophy hunting retrospective. Time for some pizza to celebrate beating 13 games. You should feel good after beating this collection, because really you just beat 13 games, some of them pretty damn difficult. Yeah, rewind, cheats, save states, blah blah blah. So if you've traveled through time multiple times, won a few fighting tournaments, platformed a bunch, especially on handheld, beat the crap out of Shredder on numerous occasions, and collected all the trophies, congratulations! You will be awarded the Splinter's favorite Platinum Trophy for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Cowabunga Collection. Overall, yeah, sure, the trophies are just kind of a participation award. I can agree to that, but they serve the purpose perfectly of getting you to check out all of these 13 games. Beat all 13, get a plat. It's that simple. I'm not too miffed about it because ultimately you're buying this collection to explore all of what these classic games have to offer. Some of these TMNT games are just as great as you might remember them, and some of them maybe haven't aged quite as well as they are in your memory. But it's a treat to have the best versions of these games brought to the modern era. Turtles in Time and Tournament Fighters, both on the SNES, are some of the best gaming you can have in their respective genres. The arcade versions are also incredible, giving us 4-player beat-em-up fun and online play that is really great. I think if you have an interest in retro games, and of course Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you might find something here that you really enjoy. And to get the plat, you just have to enjoy them to the end credits. I've given you the strats to kick Shredder's shell a bunch of times now. Go make Master Platinum Splinter proud. There is one more TMNT game that I've been slacking on beating and covering, and it's a really good one. Shredder's Revenge will definitely come to the channel in the near future. That game is an absolute love letter to these exact games in this collection. So the Turtles in a Half Shell are here to stay on this channel, and at least we will be shell smashing the Turtles Rogue Gallery one more time. Wait, there's a TMNT AAA game in development right now? Oh, let's go! Let's go! Thank you guys for tuning in to this retrospective. Really, it's a retrospective because we're just beating these games of all 13 of these Turtles games. Now, I know it's wishful thinking, but if they could find a way to make a collection of all the other Turtle games past this era of Turtle games, that would be cool, but I realize how difficult that would be. So we'll just enjoy what we have. Let me know down in the comment section if you picked up this game and which one is your favorite. I hope all your trophy hunting expeditions go incredibly well and you can have some pizza afterwards. Peace out.